Everything that you get your life, and the rest of us ridiculous crying in your hands. For just one dollar you will ask me to follow you and see you together. And if others will love you, like secrets and horrors, maybe never follow you the same I will. Waiting for a rebound, richer than your one. Jesus died in Las Vegas, and lived the life I had left. And the taste of harvest, love, pain, and regret. Jesus died in Las Vegas, and he died with the arrogance of the first love, first love, and betrayed. And after a mountain, you betrayed your friends, and you married outreaches for a few dollars a season. On your way between hills, are enough to be part of this street. One accepts it, and one believes it. Some will follow you, top of the flags and keys, with samples of a candle like you will have. These nights together, forget you don't. A way to distant substitute. Jesus died in Las Vegas, and lived the life I had loved. And the taste of home is love, pain, and regret. Jesus died in Las Vegas, and he died with the arrogance of the first love, and betrayed. Jesus died in Las Vegas, and lived the life I had loved. And the taste of home is love, pain, and regret. Jesus died in Las Vegas, and he died with the arrogance of the first love, and betrayed. Nothing is more contagious than sin. Nothing is more contagious than sin. Nothing is more contagious than sin. Nothing is more contagious than sin.
That was Spiritual Front with Jesus Died in Las Vegas. And rule, rule number 11 of 12 Rules to Mad Miracles, Death and Recovery is cultivate detachment or even scorn, which you see some scorn in the music of that band Spiritual Front, which you don't often see in the world today in music. So I mean, a lofty scorn, for and lofty contempt for the world today. Um, so if you don't say no to the vices of others, living in such a vicious world, simply swallow you. Treat 'em mean, keep 'em keen, as the saying goes. Perhaps the single strongest way to attract others and make them think highly of you is for you to express your indifference to them. Indifference should always be the standard position. The Buddhist notion of attachment or clinginess is very true. The world tries to detach us from ourselves and make it the center, as do others, harassing us constantly and demanding a reaction. That is its greatest trick. You have not known true sanity until you have withdrawn from this constant game played against you into the peace and tranquility of your own mind, in communion with the eternal rather than the evanescent, everyday wearing stimulus of others. The mantra of love, 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 blasted everywhere at full volume, or nowadays by the left, tacitly underpinned by the real message, hate, 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 is hardly very conducive to this goal of detachment and tranquility. Furthermore, to see clearly and draw power into oneself, it is necessary to be prepared to actively and habitually cultivate scorn for what has power in the world and look down upon it from the perspective of the idea of one's own values. Fear of power and association of power with truth is probably our greatest folly and precisely the thing power uses to control you. Do not think you will be rewarded for your servile cowardice. It is a simple fact that the vast majority of accepted opinions are false, even ludicrous. And even if you realize that intellectually, one can still make vastly more progress by cultivating the right emotional attitude as well and ceasing to be bothered by things. Be a lighthouse on an island amidst the turbulent, shifting waves of others. Cultivate detachment or even scorn. So there's a book by the author Boyd Rice with the title "No," which is a very good statement of this position. And something good to look into if you want to develop this viewpoint more and really get into it. Um, you there's so much like emotional blackmail and pressure to kind of like accept and be tolerant and to love in certain respects things, but that can be very 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 unhealthy and counterproductive both to yourself and others, because if you're surrounded with vice, just people who are, lost and, indulging themselves in things which are bad for them, they have no real standards, no aspiration to real art and beauty, and they're just like casual and stupid. Well, you have to say no to this if you want to actually improve yourself and make strides to, better yourself. Um, and have real standards. Um, that's not, incompatible with some kind of, continued affection or fondness or, love, for the general run of human beings or people. Um, but it's usually a necessary, phase of or stage of development whereby you separate yourself from what is wrong. And if you continue to have, a lingering affection for it, it will be, as a shepherd for his flock, so it will be with a, a self-conscious awareness that what we're dealing with here are in many ways very lost, vicious, and lower creatures, and that sounds very unpopular today, and it's more aristocratic way of seeing things, and if you say this, in the wrong place today, you're liable to be, shot down, have all kinds of venom thrown at you by exactly the kind of, vicious idiots that I'm talking about. Um, you know, um, just because vicious idiots, there are lots of them, and they gang up in crowds like the vicious idiots they are. That doesn't make them less vicious idiots. It makes them more vicious idiots. So um, you have to take a stance, like I say, on actual standards, genuine standards, such as genuine beauty, self-control, health. Those are perhaps the three main ones. Some kind of higher state of tension and power within yourself, which allows you to achieve great things. This is the aspiration. And if you look at most people around today, they are obviously failing in this. And you have to be honest with yourself and call it as it is. If not outwardly to them, at least to yourself. Um, so that's just the way it is. And like I say, you mustn't flatter power and associate power with truth. I.e., you must not associate mob rule with truth and the loud, um, insane, vicious, spiteful voices of the mob with truth. You must sever this association within yourself if it's grown up with you, and and recognize that what you're dealing with is very, 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 very substandard human material. And if you are, I mean, there are lots of people, and if you're one of them, that have your youth still, and um, potential for something higher, which most young people do, because this is something that is destroyed within us by the general vulgarity around us as we get older. If you're young, and the younger you are, it's very, very likely that you have the potential within you to, eschew this vulgarity that I'm talking about and strive for something higher. And that could be, just cultivating a more beautiful disposition, being a beacon of light, and clarity, but both intellectual, linguistic clarity, and also just positive feeling and radiance, and strength to those around you, which you don't see that widespread within society. So that's just by itself is a huge achievement, and requires the will to lift yourself above the general morass. And on top of that, you can you can dedicate yourself to other goals, which you may have to find out what they are yourself, and what your calling is. But obviously they would tend to involve things like saving the planet, right? Because there are lots of extremely deadly crises that we're facing as a species, which just the extension of one's own natural self-love and self-preservation instinct, you know, outward, requires that one take care of one's environment as well, and the ultimate environment being the planet. Um, and it can be so rewarding, when you actually cultivate within yourself genuine love of yourself and others, other human beings, and you decide to take care of them, then just applying that to to real crisis and issues that we face as a species, that is potentially so rewarding and much more fulfilling than the average just keep your head down and just go along with the flow, get an ordinary job, don't think too much, kind of mentality. This is, if you haven't yet experienced it, this is really night and day. A person who is particularly capable of higher things will be particularly miserable and dysfunctional when he is forced to associate with lower things and not really yet aware of the higher things. So potentially, somebody who is, very unhappy, or living an ordinary life, they can be totally transformed by actually finding out, a real worthwhile mission in doing something, greater than what they see around them. So this is night and day. You have to seriously consider this fact, and this possibility, if you're a young person starting out who's not yet already aware of it. And don't think that the life you've known so far is the life that you're destined for. It's people do not realize how little they know, even about themselves and what things they might be capable of. It's possible for for a person to basically, I don't know, just be kept in the dark about themselves for years and years and years, and just live in some kind of little tiny corner of their potential. And just never opening up to what they could do and what they could be and what they could achieve. Um, and it takes courage and honesty and and nobility, to realize these things. Um, and to be different and to actually embrace something other than that with which you're raised. So in order to create a very strong goal orientated personality, like I said, it requires rejecting and eschewing um, almost everything, and just keeping to quite a narrow, core identity and sense of self. Um, because as Adolf Hitler said, you in order to really become strong, you want to build a very strong, a very well filled in mosaic of beliefs which buttress your central mission and propel you towards it. So in order to actually have strength and be propelled towards a mission, you need a very high degree of coherence, um, and coherence requires the will to say yes and say no. As Nietzsche said, formula for my happiness: a yes, a no, a straight line, a goal. So you know you know it's about being firm, in what one rejects as well, and just forming a coherent, tightly knit mosaic of one's essential formulas. And that's so necessary in a world today where we are completely deluged. We have a complete deluge of confusing excess information. Um, and when you have so much information, it's even more important to to be firm and disciplined and to organize it into a very rigorous formula. Um, so that would be one of the key formulas for success today. Don't just open yourself up to the confusing mass of information, which is intentionally put out there to overload your senses and your brain's ability to cope with. And instead, you are very disciplined and you separate the wheat from the chaff, um, and make that your cardinal rule. And there are lots of other things related to these simple words. Cultivate, detachment, dream, and scorn. Which is slightly different. Such as I talk about here. The Buddhist notion of attachment or clinginess. Because what that concerns is something a bit different, which is about how people, when they grow up, they are just, their minds are kind of like in a dream, fascinated with external objects, when they don't ask the key questions about what they're all for, and the bigger things. They're just fascinated with material items, etc. Um, this is a kind of attachment or clinginess, it could be said. Which prevents people from attaining enlightenment. Instead, you detach and you cultivate detachment, indifference. Because the more power you invest in things, the more interest you have in them, the more power they have over you, and the more they enslave you. And instead of being so obsessed with material things, in the world around us, or people in the world around us, we commune with the eternal, and study the Torah and the holy books, and the Bible, which have far more lasting worth and value. Human beings long for solidity, deep down. They long for solidity and ultimately, in a kind of eternity. So the things which are concerned with eternity, such as the holy books, but also the conceptual world, the Platonic forms, language, contains concepts which the association with these, ideas, rather than the outer world of the senses uh, and um, and specific individuals and people, um, concrete individuals, but instead with concepts. That the more we associate ourselves with those, particularly when we're young, the better our understanding becomes, and the more lasting progress we make, because our progress is based on things which they're lasting, or even permanent. If you begin to ask what is love, or even other things like just what is an apple, if you study the concept of an apple, or the concept of love, or the concept of justice, um, these are um, through your association with them, you will achieve a lasting enhancement of your understanding, and a kind of possession of something really lasting and solid in a certain respect. An insight and understanding in this case, um, concerning those concepts, and in a sense concerning the real world which those concepts relate to. Rather than if you just like read the news headlines, and you read a particular case that's going on, like somebody is being tried for something, or they've or certain current certain events have happened, volcanoes gone off, and people have died, etc. Well, these are just like complete transitory events, and things to be concerned with, which they're not going to provide a lasting enhancement to your understanding. um, I mean, it's possible they could in some way, but in general it's just like an event that you become aware of, and then it passes, and um, it's just a detail. It seems like it's just a detail. Whereas if you associate with concepts, you don't associate with details. You associate with the eternal form of the universe, the eternal nature of the universe. So, that's much more rewarding. And it's going to provide you with a lasting achievement, which is going to prove useful throughout your whole life, rather than just, some passing detail which will just fade into history. And is only, really probably interesting to people because of a kind of like obsession with, the present moment, and what other people are talking about, at that particular moment. Because it's important to actually emphasize in relation to this that there's a huge kind of like pull on most people, when they're young, of the crowd, of what other people are doing. This is inauthentic design, in Heideggerian terms. The they. There's an enormous pull and drag of the collective mind on one's attention, and it's necessary for real progress to recognize this fact so that one can clearly in one's own mind separate from it and fight against it, and instead anchor oneself to the eternal or to something more substantial than the passing obsessions of the crowd, and to be able to call truth for what it is, call the facts for what they are, rather than being, like I say, hypnotized and enslaved to the herd mind. Because naturally, isolated human beings, weak, pathetic, vulnerable human beings, as we all are, frail, vulnerable, are naturally very frightened of the mob, right? We have a deep sense that, if we do something different to other people or think something different to other people, we're going to be massacred, we're going to be destroyed or executed and burnt alive as a witch or something like that, because for most of our history, we were. So in order to be honest and, overcome this, you have to recognize it and be honest with it, and then go about, resisting this wicked tendency of human beings, because it is wicked and vicious to distort your own perception of the truth and of justice just because of what other people are saying and doing. It's going to be generally, in the long run, it's going to be detrimental for you. At least, if you do these things the right way, it's much better to be truthful, early on. You will be rewarded for that. And obviously, it's important to be, just and kind, rather than just, if there's like a lynching mob, just going and joining them and feeling, self-righteous in one's, anonymity among the murderous mob. So to be actually moral, or honest, it requires an enormous amount of, scorn, or or it's very compatible with an enormous amount of scorn, or even requires it. um, or what is called hate, perhaps, but it's quite confusing, and it's quite ironic because we hear message of love, love, as I say here, love, 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 or be tolerant, etc., be open to others. But I mean that's very unhealthy because you need to actually have firm boundaries and take a stance against things in order to know who you are and to be have any and to retain your own health. But in reality, this message of love, love, love is it's tacitly underpinned by the real message, which is hate, hate, hate anyway. Um, First of all, it's very hateful to somebody who's young just to tell them to love, 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 because that's a very confusing message, which, like I say, prevents them from forming clear boundaries. Um, but in our society, in reality, what this message "love, love, love" is it's like basically a sledgehammer to beat people over the head. Who are the political opposition, and you see that almost everywhere in the nature of the people who are the messengers of this message, or the vehicles or the victims of this message. You know, you should be more tolerant, you fucking racist. um, so, it's a little bit transparent. I feel that this is basically vulgar nastiness disguising itself as in some kind of moral facade. I think that's a little bit transparent. Um, mm. So, I mean, like I say, the ironic thing is that if you do what I'm saying, you're going to be like a beacon of radiant truth to everybody around you. And very soon they're going to love you for it and they're going to really like you for it. I mean, when you're posting, very unpopular things on Twitter, you may get a lot of backlash and that kind of thing. You have a lot of detractors. But if you're reasonably canny about the way you do it, you do things in the right order, perhaps. So you get your friend, you do it with the slightly more sympathetic people first. They are going to really see that you're just an old-fashioned, good guy, and kind of knight in shiny armor. And that's going to be more powerful to them than the fact that what you're saying is rather confrontational, and goes against what they originally thought. Um, it's not always going to be easy or like that with everybody, and it can be dangerous, unfortunately, because unfortunately in the last 10 or so years, things have broken down so much that you know we have lots of people in our society now who we didn't have before, who they will murder you if you say certain things in public, and the authorities just encouraged this and let it happen, allowed this situation to come to exist. And it's obviously it's an enormous shift in society because, you know, it may only be like 0.01% of people, but if you get 0.0% of one people who, will murder you for saying things which are, unpopular or against what they believe, that's an absolutely, night and day shift again between a society where, you have 0% of people who are going to murder you for saying something that, that's not popular. In one case, the whole dialogue is completely stifled because people are afraid to say what they already think and can't speak their mind and so the whole society becomes a society of snakes and people frightened for their lives. Because if you have 0.01% of people who are going to murder you, or even a bit less, then the chances are that you will be murdered. That these people are going to be, they're going to notice you if you get any kind of following, like they did Pim Fortune in Holland, and you're going to be dead. It's absolute catastrophe for society what's happened in the last 10, 20 years in relation to this. I mean, it wasn't perfect before, but it's got much worse. This is not irrelevant because the numbers are very, very small. It may only be 0.01%. That 0.01% is like an 1,000 or 2,000 or 10,000% fold increase in the murderous political people we had before. When you walk down the street in a city, you don't want to be 99.9% safe. You want to be 99.9999999999999% safe. You want to be 100% safe. You don't want to be 99.9% safe. You want to be 100% safe. If you're only 99.9% safe, well, statistically, that means if you walk down that street 1,000 times, as you will in your lifetime, one of them you're going to be raped or murdered, or at least, mugged. But equally importantly, you're never going to feel safe. You're going to be, your cortisol levels are going to be raised, and everybody's will throughout society. People are going to live in fear if they have any sense. It's going to rob you of your savor of life and your enjoyment, your pleasure in life. You want to be 100% safe, not 99.9. So in our society today, yes, I would love for people generally to become more outspoken and speak the truth, and stand up for integrity and honesty and justice. Because if it became more culturally widespread, well, it would win out and be much easier, and the whole radical shape of society would be transformed. But on the other hand, I can't especially recommend totally that you demonstrate this scorn, this detachment and scorn, you know, maybe openly in public, or maybe as much as I'm doing, because now as society's been transformed in the last 10, 20 years, it does represent a real danger to yourself. But on the other hand, I wouldn't totally recommend against it either. Because like I say, in general, people will warm to you and they'll see the good of what you're doing. Um, and at least if you just do it a bit more than is done at the moment, because at the moment we have unusual cowardice. At the moment, it seems people are afraid simply of offending people, right? Um, and it was like this even before it became legally enshrined. So even 10 years ago, or so before hate speech laws came into law, people were already just felt they didn't want to offend people, and they didn't want to be insensitive, and as a result the whole dialogue was stifled, and things were allowed to get even worse as a result because of just pathetic polite cowardice. You know, these silly-headed people who think that it's immoral to upset people, hurt their emotions. 10, 20 years down the line, the whole society is in chaos, and we're getting, people blown up left, right, and center. Well, we'll see. But you know, the dialogue has certainly deteriorated, and become even more. Um, um, you know, when the honest people back off, the thought police, progress and and move forward, and they just make it even harder. So, you know, like I say, 10, 20 years ago, there wasn't much excuse for keeping your mouth shut. Now there's a bit more real, there's increasing danger, both from the authorities and from, violent vigilantes. Um, but it's very important that people are at least psychologically are mature enough not to be unwilling to hurt people's feelings or offend them, etc. That's not a moral concern, and the way it manifests or has manifested, it's gone beyond self-preservation to some kind of prissy silly-headedness. um, so what you want is just to be wary of real bad people hurting you for what you're saying when you're just saying the truth. But get clear in your mind that um, that it's the moral thing is to be firm, and not to bow to other people's hissy fits and crocodile tears. Um, so um, what you want is a default attitude of skepticism, which is similar to like an emotional attitude of scorn or detachment, or just being not particularly impressed by what you're seeing and things in your environment. Like I say, like the saying goes, treat them mean, keep them keen. If you just, show a little bit, of manly indifference, maturity, don't act like some kind of fawning 6-year-old, impressed by everything, and and oh, he said this, she said this, oh, but instead you just like roll your eyeballs at it all. Then, well, that's much more respectable, and people will actually respect you for it. And they, when you don't invest such, fawning attention in them, they will be more likely to actually listen up and prick up their ears and say, who's this guy? He's not impressed by me. He must be. He interests me. He's interesting. He interests me now because because he's not fawning over me. It's the same as in romance and romantic situations. If you are over keen, you're going to sabotage yourself. And this relates to the fact that, at a subconscious level, most people, particularly, the masses, they hold themselves in contempt. Rightly, they hold themselves in contempt. So, although they will try to bully you, and lobby you for your praise and flattery, and they'll play hurt and angry when you don't give it, like some miscreant child. Just as a child is more likely to respect his parents if they're not fawning over his tantrums all the time and just trying to please him all the time, in ways which don't actually meet his deeper desires, but just his irritable desires, not his deeper desires. In the same way, the average human being, the adult, they respect you more for not respecting them and their stupidity, because at a deeper level, they know that what they're doing is pathetic, and simply a product of their own lack of self-control. Because in a way, people are both better and worse than they appear. They're worse than they give off. In that, what they say is a lot more stupid and immoral and pathetic than they like to portray it. But on the other hand, they're better than they appear because deep down they know it. And if you speak up for truth and righteousness and justice enough, if you do it enough, eventually, they will nod their heads and say, "Yeah, thank you for returning me to my senses and being honourable enough to speak up for me when I wasn't honorable enough to even speak up for myself. You return me to my deeper self, because if you look at a lot of the policies that people are campaigning for out there today, and particularly on the left, well, they're basically campaigning for their own enslavement and euthanization. You know, they're like, um, cattle, campaigning to be slaughtered. It's, so they desperately, deep down, they desperately want to be saved from themselves. But it's a complex and delicate procedure to achieve that kind of self-realization that I'm talking about. Obviously, there's a high chance that you'll lose your head in the attempt, but hopefully not, because it doesn't always work out like that. You see so many people have been transformed by the lectures of Jordan Peterson or Stefan Molyneux, who were originally just had different views and were more on the left, etc. And these their firm words and willingness to tell the truth even when it's unpopular has transformed lots of lives. Thank you for listening.